honored to be with you and to speak with you. You know, Palestine is part of Greater Syria, and it was under the Ottoman occupation for almost 5 centuries. In 1897, the Zionist movement convened a conference in Basel, Switzerland, to have a Jewish state in Palestine in 1897. In 1915, you know, almost the end of the First War. In 1916, the British and French, they had a meeting secretly to divide the Ottoman Middle East Empire. It's called Sykes-Picot. And in that time, they talk about the holy places, mainly in Bethlehem, Nazareth, Jerusalem, will be under international administration. In 1917, it was under the British mandate, almost. 1917, there was Balfour Declaration. Balfour Declaration granting the Jews homeland in Palestine at the eve of the war. Essentially, the British also promised the Arabs to have an Arab state in historical Palestine. So, from that time and before it, at the end of the 20th century, 1890, 1870, they started with building settlements, having places, some of it the Jewish agency bought, and they start with agricultural cooperatives. And they were smart, to be frank with you, places that they say, you know, was not good for living, they buy it with lots of money, sometimes using local people and sometimes foreign agencies. And this continued during the British mandate. And there were lots of Jewish immigration to Palestine under the British mandate. And of course, lots of events happening, lots of resistance. And one of the most important things, 6-month strike by Palestinians against the British at that time. And of course, the Zionist movement had a strong ally at that time, UK, before they were with the US. Then the Second World War started. The Second World War allowed Jewish groups who are well armed to take part in the Second World War, to fight here and there. So, of course, the Jewish groups had gained a lot of experience in fighting. And especially, they were more based in the Middle East. And of course, what happened to the Jews during the Holocaust, they were the victims, and we became the victims of the victims. In 1947, the UN has an international resolution to divide Palestine, a Jewish state, an Arab state. Over 52% of Palestine will be given to the Jews, 45% for the Arabs, not Palestinians, they say Arabs, and 3% or more or less, or 1%, sometimes we say 52 for the Jewish state, sometimes it is 54. So along that, at least 1% to be international. Then there are two narratives about who started the war in 1948. But the result of it, that the Jewish groups controlled over 77.7% of historic Palestine. The remaining fall under Jordan and Egypt. The West Bank under Jordan, Gaza Strip under Egypt, from 48 to 67. And of course, between 48 and 67, lots of things happening, attacks, Palestinians try to resist, most of it unarmed, a little bit armed. At the end, Israel controlled the remnant of Palestine, the West Bank and Gaza, and including East Jerusalem. So all the land by 1967 became under Israel. And of course, lots of events. In 1965, the PLO was established. They have educational department, political department, economic department, and they began recruiting Palestinians to be in the PLO factions to resist the occupation. Most of the resistance, again, were unarmed struggle. A few percentage were armed struggle. And the problem is the world didn't listen and didn't hear the Palestinian voices until Palestinians used some relatively small violent attacks. Anyhow, to make the story short, the Israeli occupation of the West Bank started in 1967. And in 1967, Israel confiscated more land, built more settlements, deprived Palestinian families of family unification, divide further the West Bank and Gaza. The Palestinians inside the Green Line, 1948, or Israel, were under martial law. So Israel occupied the West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem, lift up the martial law, and then the long simmering frustration over the occupation was exploded in uprising. The young people took the streets protesting the Israeli politics, the Israeli practices, the Israeli human rights violation, the carnage, the confiscation of land, the control over borders, the killing of young people, the assassination of the hopes, the ambitions, and the dreams of the Palestinians. So 1987 was the beginning of the uprising. Until 1993, there were channels to talk about peace and negotiations. The Norwegian capital started that under the Oslo Accords, and then with the Americans in another way, that led to the peace process in 1995. And the idea is that we will have some interim period. The Palestinian people will control themselves for the first time, and they will start in Jericho and Gaza, and then it will go gradually until Israel withdraw from all the occupied territories. Supposed to be in a few years, but Israel didn't commit itself. That led to the new uprising, 2001, and where Israel shelled lots of places, houses, killing young people, and others deported many people. And this has been the situation since 2001. And nowadays, with the policy of this right-wing government, more Palestinians were dispersed, more land was confiscated, more settlements were built, human rights violations are very big, family unification is denied, and the situation gets from bad to worse and from worse to the worst. Until this moment, I am telling you. The PLO accepted in 1965, talking about a state, a democratic, secular state in Palestine. And when they say democratic, secular, that means Jews, Muslims, Christians to be together in that land. And to live equally based on citizenship and under the law. This dream didn't see the light. And then, as I said, Israel occupied the remnant of historic Palestine in 1967. So the dream of two states still there, but how to achieve it? Through struggle, through negotiations, through coalitions, through networks. At the end, the Palestinian didn't give up the dream of one secular democratic state until there were some negotiations. And the American administration said this will not be achieved unless the Palestinians responded to three conditions. And this is Mr. Kissinger's conditions. Denounce terrorism, 242 and 338 recognition by the Palestinians, and the third, to recognize Israel. The Palestinians said, we have no problem to ask for end to all kinds of violence. And from me, my understanding to all kinds of violence is not only insurgent violence or individual or political groups by the president, but also state violence, state-sponsored violence like the settlers. And of course, we talk about environmental violence. There were talks here and there. Before that, the Arabs have a meeting in Sudan, in Khartoum, and they say no to three things. No to the negotiation, no to the recognition, no, and no peace process. But the PLO, despite of that, in 1974, said we will have our own entity, our authority over any piece of land that Israel withdraw or we liberate. So the PLO, in a way, left the door open for negotiations. If the negotiations resulted in withdrawal of Israeli peacefully from this land, we'll begin our own state authority. If they don't, and we are able to liberate it by force, of course, we'll start it. And there are many events happening from 74 to 1995, when the peace process started. Wars in Lebanon, attacks here and there, violation of human rights everywhere. Then in 1982, Israel decided to annex East Jerusalem, to consider it as eternal and unified capital of Israel. So they include East Jerusalem to be part of Israel and to be, announced, to be claimed, to be talked about as the unified capital of Israel, unified eternal capital of Israel, leaving no room for Palestine. Despite that, the Palestinians become unreasonable reasonable. They say, we'll continue with the negotiations. We need to talk. And this is how the peace process started. The Palestinians wanted the following to be the arbitrators of the Middle East, peace talks. The European Union, Russia, the UN, and the American administration. So they call it the quartet. And the Palestinians continue with their struggle, with their presence, with their steadfastness in the West Bank. Then Israel allowed the Palestinians to start their authority under international umbrella in Jericho and Gaza. They call it Jericho Gaza first, in order that Israel will continue to withdraw from the cities and they divide us into A, B, C. And Israel will withdraw from area A and then B and then C. It seems the Israeli policy was to procrastinate, to postpone any solution, and they will annex more land. And they violate laws, attacks on holy places, confiscating land under the security justification that we will, take this land for security reasons. And Israel is worshipping a new golden calf called security. Whatever they want, they say security reasons. For example, I'm married since 1990 for 33 years, and my wife has no right to live with me. She is on tourist visa, and you ask them why, they say security reasons. So there is always using security reasons for everything. And then most of the confiscation land, if not for security, will be for public use. What does mean public use? Is exclusively Jewish use. Public use, exclusively Jewish use. So what happened? That Israel will continue in confiscating land, building more settlements, denying the rights of the Palestinians, the civil and political rights, the economic and social rights, and the national rights. So this continued until 2001, when we have another uprising to ask the Israel to leave us. And that was the crux of more troubles for Palestinians, creating more facts on the ground. So that's really was not easy situation. Israel will shell houses, helicopters are used, tanks were used, reoccupation of the centers of the cities, villages, create unhealthy conditions for us. So in a way or another, the two-state solution was not addressed and was not achieved. Despite the fact of what I have said, the Palestinians continue to say, we are committed to two-state solution. Now, a growing group among Palestinians, they say, no more believe in two-state solution. We want to struggle for one secular democratic state where Jews and Palestinians could live together on equal footing. So this is the situation, and up till this moment, if you look at the geographical map, you will see that the Palestinians, land is losing the grip over it. As I mentioned earlier, in 1993, there were 100,000 Israeli settlers. Now we have more than 1 million in the occupied territories, and the Israeli right-wing government under Smotrich and Ben Gvir would like to have another 1.5 million in the south. So I believe the Israeli did not want to wed us or separate from us. They want to deal with us with three things: captive market, cheap labor, and garbage dump. They want us to be the slaves, to be working in sweatshops. And because they try to bring laborers and workers from all corners of the world, but they failed because the Palestinians are working hard. And at least probably 300,000 work in Israel and commute every day. And of course, they were under double standard. They don't have all of their, rights, and they were treated badly. So no more from the Israeli side state solution, and they consider West Bank as part of Israel land. And of course, you know what happened in Gaza. I didn't talk about it. Israel withdrew from Gaza unilaterally after there were 8,000 Israeli settlers in Gaza and almost 20 settlements. And then withdraw, leaving a vacuum power, created chaos, created unhealthy conditions for the Gaza, didn't sign a treaty with Israel. So the situation gets complicated, and Israel is doing annexation of the West Bank slowly. They want to divide the Dome of the Rock, finally, as well as place, and then they are creating a new facts in East Jerusalem, building bridges, building settlements, new roads, confiscating more land, demolishing more houses, under, again, the justification that the Palestinians in East Jerusalem didn't have a permit, as well as such policy also against the Arabs inside Israel, who make more or less 2 million. They still demolish houses. Even the Druze and Bedouins, some of them serve in the Israeli army. When they came back to their home, they received a warning that their home will be destroyed. Some of them I'm talking about. And because they lack having a permission and all of that justification. So this is the story of two-state solution. Up till this moment, the international community and the American administration, the UN still talk about two-state solution, but I'm afraid that it will not be viable and it will not be a solution because Israel is eating up the land piece by piece. We talk about Palestinian organizations. The PLO was established and it consists more than 13 political parties. Mostly at that time were from secular, pan-Arabist to left wings. Nowadays, these groups are there, but there are groups outside the PLO. We have Islamic groups, especially after the Iranian Revolution, Islamic Revolution in 1979. This gives more power, energy to Islamic groups to blossom, to increase in the area. Now we have Islamic groups, the main two parties, Hamas and Jihad. And mostly they are much more powerful in Gaza, despite the fact that there is a revolt against Hamas rule in Gaza nowadays, because they failed to deliver the good news for the people in terms of electricity, in terms of water services, in terms of safety, security, democracy, the standard of living dropped down drastically. In the West Bank, there's dissatisfaction also because they think the PLO and the PA has been very, cooperative with the Israeli, and the people are not happy that the PLA is not responding to their needs. Because Israel, in a way or another, with its matrix of control, prevent any kind of development. You cannot build a straight road until you have the agreement, especially between the cities. And the West Bank becomes islands. You cannot go from place to place. And the PA is in control of Area A. So what kind of authority you have? If Area A and Israel is in control of the 70% of the West Bank, and if you want to go from Bethlehem to Ramallah, you need to cross the streets where Israel is in control. We cannot go to Jerusalem. East Jerusalem is isolated. All Jerusalem is isolated from us. And this is the first time in history since 2000 that Bethlehem is separated from Jerusalem. Bethlehem and Jerusalem were twin cities all over the years, regardless to who occupy us. The Ottomans, the Crusaders, the Byzantines, the Romans, the Egyptians, but this time they separate us. So we become living in small islands. I consider small prisons, and the West Bank is a big prison. And Gaza, it's a concentration camp by itself, And so this is not helpful. We always seek to be members of UN umbrellas, UN groups, and we try to register our membership in everything in the UN. We have observer status yet. We don't have as a state. Although there are more than 120 states in the world recognize us, because there are two resolutions separate: General Assembly and Security Council. And always the Security Council, which should be binding, Uncle Sam means United States veto it. So we are not having a state, although there are many states who recognize us individually, but not as collectively. So, and up till this moment, we ask to solve this occupation using the UN resolutions. And even one resolution that equate Israel and Zionism as racist, I don't think the Palestinians are talking a lot about it, although many groups are influencing the world to call Israel apartheid regime. We are not interested in name calling. We are interested in our freedom. We want to be liberated and to live side by side with other countries and states in the Middle East. Up till this moment, the dream is not yet there. And I'm afraid that the possibility of having two-state solution is getting dimmer, is getting no impact, and might not lead to any kind of future, because Israel would like to have the cake and eat it, and Israel is not giving any chance to the international community to empower the Palestinians and to work with it. During the different years after Oslo, the Europeans and others helped the Palestinians to have roads, to have better life. Then in 2001, Israel demolished the infrastructure of water, infrastructure of roads, even the possibility of having airport, seaport in Gaza. All of that is liquidated. So I am afraid it is the worst of times now, and I don't know where it will lead. The number of Palestinians and the number of Jews in the Holy Land is equal. So there is a demographic problem for Israel. Second, that as a result of this new government and the new laws that they want to have, many Israelis leaving the country. So all intelligence are leaving, and this will evacuate the middle class and the liberal people and the middle class, as well as the people who have capital. In the same time, as a result of the Israeli politics in the West Bank, many Palestinians are living in the country. So what is going to be at the end? To have people who are more poor in the two societies and maybe more right-wing, because Israel right-wing is increasing in its power and religious extremism is increasing, and poor in the West Bank. And then there will be another cycle of violence. I don't know, it will be a religious violence or violence of ignorances, violence. And the issue is what is needed just is to withdraw from the occupied territories, to respect our borders, and to have mutual agreements based on confidence building measures, trust building measures, and let the Palestinians live their life in dignity and peace and coexistence with all the states in the Middle East. It seems it is a far-fetched policy under this right-wing government. And to give you some glimpse and some points about the Palestinian peace policy. First of all, I don't like the word peace naked. I like always to associate it with justice. Justice is the backbone of any peace. Peace process, peace of mind, peace of heart, peace living. So that's why we focus on justice. And when we talk about the Palestinian peace policy, we are talking about the different issues that deal with peace and justice. As a Palestinian, our struggle have been accommodationist and not rejectionist. When we talk about the peace process, we talk about the Palestinian initiative to commit itself, to commit our representative, the PLO, to the peace process. But the problem is there is no peace and there is no process. We are processed. Instead of being at the table, we are on the table. That doesn't mean that we give up our struggle, our strive, our thought, our work for peace. Because peace is very important. Peace is essential for our life. That keeps us in a good mood, in a good situation, keep our sanity, keep our vision, keep our strategy. But the problem, the enemies of peace are lots of them, locally, regionally, internationally. The PLO, which is our representative, was having dialogue and negotiation with Israeli under the auspices of the Europeans, the Americans, the international community. But nothing has been fruitful. Nothing positive has been happened. In 1993, we have around 100,000 Israeli settlers in the occupied territories. Now we have almost 1 million. And according to the Israeli government nowadays, which is the most right-wing government ever in history, would like to have the cake and eat it, there will be another 1.5 million Israeli settlers in the south, Bethlehem and Hebron, in the south of the West Bank. So therefore, what kind of peace we are talking about? For us, peace is based on justice, based on restorative justice, how to redress the wrongs rather than avenging it. That's why we are interested in peace. And we talk about gone the time of romantic views and wishful thinking. In the past, we thought that we will build a secular democratic state in all historic Palestine. That means 1948 land, which is Israel now, and the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem. But since the international community would like to see two-state solution, we thought, okay, our struggle is accommodationist and not rejectionist. We said, okay, we accept to build two-state solution. We need to have a fair solution to the refugees. We would like to control our resources, water and land. We would like to control our border. We would like to see Jerusalem as our capital, as well as we want to see things develop, to have vitality, and to be a viable state to live with other states in our area. We don't want to live alone. And you know, it is when we talk about justice, I'm not talking about just us. It is justice for all, to live and celebrate life, not to celebrate death. So we talk about settlements should be dismantled and should be part, you know, of the Palestinian territory, and to have the doors open for the refugees that they want to come, which were kicked out in 1948. And as you know, 1948, there were more than 600 villages leveled, destroyed, more than 750,000 refugees. Nowadays, we are talking about 14 million Palestinians, half of them are refugees. And we talk about almost 60 refugee camps in the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and of course, East Jerusalem, as well as other refugee camps in Jordan, in Lebanon, and Syria. Besides the refugees who don't live in refugee camps, there are other refugee people living in other places, in other cities, in other villages, in diaspora and in the home. So we thought we will struggle for the right of return according to UN resolutions. The Palestinian refugees have the right of return as well as compensation. Now, the Palestinian negotiating team was talking about fair solution for the refugees, talking about different approaches to deal with this issue. So there are many rooms for negotiation. But the basic is that Israel should recognize the plight of the Palestinian people in general and the refugees. Second, we talk about Jerusalem. Yes, we like to see Jerusalem as a spiritual capital as well as earthly capital. Spiritual capital for Muslims, Christians, Jews, and earthly capital for Palestinians. We talk about East Jerusalem, they talk about West Jerusalem, so there is a room for negotiation. And no one has acknowledged the annexation of the Israeli to East Jerusalem. So the Jerusalem should be enjoyed by all of us, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, and all the world. And of course, we should have free movement to go to the churches, to the mosques, to the holy places without any restrictions by the Israeli soldiers or Israeli government. Jerusalem is very important for the peace of all people, for the peace in the Middle East, and for the world peace. But what is happening now in Jerusalem? The right-wing Jews would like to build the third temple. And if they want to build the third temple, they would like to destroy the holy places. And this is not a recipe for coexistence, for peace or justice. It is a recipe for a religious war. I don't want to be part of this war. I don't want to win a seat in heaven or conquer the enemy. I like to live, celebrate life with others, with everyone who is different from me. I like to celebrate differences. This is what I want to do. So Jerusalem should be enjoyed by all of us, and it is not easy to do it. It's not easy to think how to do it, but the international community is responsible for justice and peace here and there. The international community should stop the annexation of Israel, should stop the demolishing of houses, building of settlements, and the attacks on Christian churches and Muslim holy places. Otherwise, it will be a religious war. It will be a terrible religious war, worse than the Israeli occupation. And this will create international crisis that will lead to all conflicts included. So Jerusalem is the key element and foundation brick for peace process. We want to be on equal footing. We want to be shoulder to shoulder to create peace and justice and coexistence on this planet, in the Middle East, as well in the whole world. So the other issue, the issue of water. We want peace. We want to share the resources. We have less than 10% of the water. And it comes once, could be every 3 weeks, every 3 months. And what will be accumulated in the water tank? That's trigger a lot of stones. It will create unhealthy situation. With this heat, we have our trees are dry, our plants killed because we don't have water every day. If we go to the Israeli settlements around us in the Palestinian territory, in the West Bank, you will see the water 24 hours, the green lawns, the pools, and everything. We don't have that luxury. Sometimes we recycle water. We start to clean the dishes, and then we collect the water to clean the floor, and then we collect the water to use it for the toilet. And if it is clear and clean of any chemicals, we'll use it to water the plants and trees. And we pay 2 to 3 times of what our neighbors pay. And the water is coming from our grounds, from the aquifers around our grounds. So the water comes from there. The water comes from there. So we need to control our resources and to use it fairly. We are not allowed to dig deep aquifers, deep wells. Everything is under the Israeli control. Israeli matrix of control beyond your imagination, in the land, in the sky, in the ground, in the rivers, and the sea. I'm not against Israeli people. I'm not against Jewish people. We are against the colonization, the occupation, the unhealthy conditions of what we are living. So this is the problem of our situation. We talk about land. Give example of Bethlehem. The governorate of Bethlehem, which is part of the West Bank. Israel is in control of 87% of the land. 13% for us. And this 13% is not contiguous. It is divided. There are Israeli settlements around it. There are 25 settlements around Bethlehem and more than 20 outposts with a population of almost 200,000. The Israeli would like not only more land, but also more demography. At this moment, they want more geography to extended to annex it to Israel unless Palestinian demography and even ethnic cleansing. So we want to control over our land. Israel occupied the West Bank, which was 22.7% of the historic land. Nowadays, Israel is in control of 60% of this area to build settlements, bypass roads, security areas, and so on. It is not a recipe for justice, for coexistence, for reconciliation and peace. Despite that, the Palestinian leaders decide to go on this less traveled road for negotiations, for peace, for work together. And even when we tell our leaders that the Israeli is eating us up, controlling everything, even we cannot breathe freely, they say we need more negotiations. And Israel would like to negotiate for hundreds of years, for thousands of weeks and months, for millions of days. They want not to give us anything. Much ado about nothing. But up till this moment, we didn't give up the pursuit for justice and peace. So we talk about land that we are not in control in any border, on any place. There are at least 600 checkpoints around the area. 600. It is easier for me to come to Korea rather than to go to Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, and to sleep overnight in Korea. So we talk about water, we talk about land, we talk about refugees, we talk about we talk about Jerusalem. All of these are not negotiated upon. And on top of that, we are not allowed to live together as a family. I have been married since 1990 to American woman. Don't take it against me, please. For 33 years, the Israeli didn't give her right to live with me, family unification. While there is Israeli law called the law of return, which gives Israel the right to welcome any person who claims his or herself a Jew because their great-grandmother is Jewish, and they are not allowed us to live here, even we might have roots deeper than the creation of the state of Israel and than any Jews, because we come from the nation of Jebusite and Canaanite. Since 1990, I'm not allowed to live with my wife freely. She is on tourist visa. Look how much it costs financially to renew the visa. And after 2 or 3 times, they say should leave, go to the States, go to buy tickets, travel to Jordan, to stay in hotels. This is financially costly. What about psychologically costly? What about spiritually costly? What about socially costly? So Israel tried to create unhealthy conditions for us to live. Then, family unification, many people are not allowed to live freely. Despite the fact that we are all Palestinians, whether we live in so-called Israel or the West Bank or Gaza, we are not allowed to choose our wives or husbands from the West Bank, Gaza, or Israel now. While they bring anyone who claims that his great-grandmother was Jewish with a signature stamp of rabbi, they can live in any place of the land. Look at this plight, dividing the land, dividing the people, scattering the families, kills our hopes, assassinate our ambitions, does not create any future for their coexistence. These are just some taste of what we suffer from. Despite of that, we still believe in peace and justice. I believe in nonviolence. non-violence to get rid of the occupation. And we believe in the cooperation of the three dimensions of non-violence. The Palestinians to continue their proactive non-violence to get rid of the occupation. The Israeli peace camp to have a preventive approach of non-violence to help their government to get rid of the occupied territories. The third is people like you, UN, peace camp, international groups, to empower the weak, but to bring the strong to their senses and not to their knees, because we believe in restorative justice. Yes, some people say forget about the Israeli society. The Israeli society moves to the right. Yes. When Israel was created, it was created by agnostic people, communist, liberal, different groups. Now almost the majority of the state of Israel, of the Israeli people, are moving to the right. And they say there is no hope of any peace group. I say no. The peace group in Israel, despite the small, is a ray of hope. And they are part of the three places of and the three communities that lead to achieve justice, coexistence, reconciliation, and peace. So this is really another issue, another problem that we face, that Israel would like to have the cake and eat it. And Israel is powerful. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this is the state here. And lack of power also corrupts, because it is based on patron-client relationship. It's not based on equality, on dignity, and humanity. It's based on power subjugation, power occupation. It's power oppression, depression, and frustration. We want to be free and to deal with the free people. When we talk about two-state solution, the Palestinian struggle has been accommodationist and not rejectionist. And we thought the peace process would be jump start and a quantum leap that leads to qualitative leap. That means the Palestinians will build their state on the land occupied in 1967, including East Jerusalem, with territorial exchange, with a fair solution to the refugees and compensation, and Jerusalem to be shared capital, open city without walls. The Palestinians have the right to Jerusalem from all religions, Muslims and Christians and Jews and people from all the world, to have a free access. And of course, we can talk about this piece of land or that piece of land. And to be contiguous and viable state. Or even if we don't want to have two-state solution, I have no problem for a secular, democratic, binational state. Palestinians and Jews to live together. Because if we talk about demography, the Palestinian population in the Holy Land, I mean Israel, Palestine, West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, whatever the term is, and the Jewish population are together equally. There are almost 8 million Palestinian and 8 million Israeli Jews. And if they want to live together and to coexist, if they don't want to have two-state solution, one-state solution. If they don't want to have two-state solution separately, it will be like Federation Confederation or Benelux. And this is really a little far-fetched, but it is a dream. We thought that if there is a will, there is a way. And this is our ambitions, to live together side by side on equal footing, based on citizenship, not discrimination because of my religion or nationality or color or gender. This is simplified. But of course, there are many thorny issues need to discuss and to solve. So this is where we are, and this is what we want. We want our children to feel freely living in this land with dignity, with humanity, and not to hate. We need to deal with the ideology of hate, and we should transform the religious leaders and religion from being used as a source of conflict, a source of bloodshed, a source of hating each other, to a resource for peace building, for coexistence, for non-violence, for sharing the land and living together. That's why we don't want to curse darkness, but to light a humble candle. And we light a humble candle by the creation and foundation of WIAM, which is the Palestinian Conflict Transformation Center. And in WIAM, we have different departments with different programs. And I would like to use the documentary that we have on our webpage called Waging Peace at WIAM, 5 minutes, which explains a lot about the activity of WIAM. We are a community-based society, and we believe the family is a viable socio-economic unit. We need to work with children, with youth, with women, the family, based on non-violence, based on citizenship, based on equality, and to see the separation of the three powers, or four powers even, executive, judicial, legislative, and the media, and to live together in respect to your political, social, economic, and educational background, based on equality, dignity, equality, and citizenship. So work with women on UN 1325, which talk about women, gender, and peace. We work with women in the refugee camp, in the city, and in the village. We work with all of them. But before that, we work also to endorse CEDAW, the Convention of Elimination on all discrimination against women. And we work and try to influence the authority to endorse the family protection law. Nowadays, we have more domestic violence. We have a lot of displaced anger, a lot of violence locally. And of course, we live in pressure cooker situation. And if it like, we live in prison, big prison, the West Bank, and a small prison called Bethlehem. And if Martin Luther King is alive, he will write a letter from Bethlehem jail, from Hebron jail, from Gaza jail. We want to be free and celebrate life and not death. So we work with women around the clock. We mediate, we solve conflict, we provide socio-economic and social and psychological consultation. We work with youth. 70% of our youth is under the age of 30. 50% under the age of 15. We are youth population. And we need them to feel that they are respected and treated nicely. Otherwise, there will be a recipe for resistance. You know, because horses are born and human beings are made. If we want to have responsible young people, responsible kids, we should find for them compassionate listening approach, tenderness, warm family, and to feel that they are dignified. If they treated badly, if they were humiliated at the checkpoints, if they were oppressed, there is no such any kind of recipe that they will be peace agents. You know, 1/3 of our male population have been in jail since 67. 20,000 of women have been in jail since 67. We have trauma coping. It is an ongoing trauma, layer after layer. And we have at least 4 types of trauma. Collective trauma of 1948, intergenerational trauma, 48, 67, and so on. We have family trauma and personal trauma. And kids are traumatized. So we work with kids to find ways to ease their stress, ventilate easily, to think positively through art therapy, through theater, through dance, through telling stories, through writing, through singing, through music, through sports, in order to build a very wonderful group. We work with men, of course. Men are threatened always by the violence of the occupation. And of course, the displaced anger of men on women and children and the neighbors and so on. We want to put a cycle end for this violence. And to break the cycle, it will be through transformation, collective responsibility, restorative justice. This is the only way you break the cycle of violence. Otherwise, we'll create more violence. Justice and peace is the name of the game. Not hate, not enmity, not killing, not revenge. We are human beings entitled to self-determination and statehood. We are entitled to dignity and respect. So this is the only recipe for justice and peace. In order to do that, we try to have dialogue of cultures and dialogue of religions. So we have exchange programs with women, men from all over the world. So we do that with work with men and women and everywhere. And we believe in dialogue with cultures and religions because we want to build a state that bases itself on the values, international values and local values. And to have culture of acceptance, to accept others as they are, as well as to accept us as we are. And that's why we have citizen diplomacy program, where we house groups, regardless to their faith, to their nationality, to their ethnicity, to their gender, to their, and provide them not only to visit the holy places, holy stones, but to meet with the living stones and to be introduced to the rolling stones, the socio-economic political conditions. And we want them to meet with everyone and to have knowledge from its first sources, from the main sources, rather than to be victims of stereotypes, of bad media, and so on. So this is where we are, and this is what we want. We want to see life, to live life, to celebrate life, and not death. And on top of that, we are believing in social gospel, that whatever you do for the least of my brothers and sisters, you are doing it for me, as Jesus said. And we respect all religions. And we have no problem with dialogue of religions. But we have a problem if the dialogue will be lip service or opportunity for photo. We want to be true. You know the truth, and the truth will liberate you. as well as what Amos said, what does the Lord require from thee? To do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with thy God. We cannot have peace with God if we don't have peace with each other. We cannot celebrate life if we kill the other. For us, the enemy is a friend in the waiting, and the other is a sister or brother. Aren't we are part of this global community? And we are brothers and sisters in humanity. Irrespect to our religions or to any differences. And I emphasize that we need to celebrate differences. So during COVID, we become a social base office, provide food, health, hygiene kits, job creation, because we want to dignify people rather than to curse them. And we are open for any new ways, any new approaches to create healthy atmosphere and to think of a better life. As Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. And we have a dream to live together in peace, justice, coexistence, and to have reconciliation. We want to celebrate life and not death. To put yourself in the shoes of others. They are wounded, or when they are imprisoned, or one person killed, or tortured, or deported. But of course, we'll be with the people to help them gain the trust and confidence in life through rehabilitation, through listening to their agony, to have compassionate listening, not only by ears, but by heart. We'll go to that place, listen and listen and listen, and to empower them to validate their feelings and sorrows, to walk with them, to be in their moccasin, as the Native Americans say. It's not enough to put yourself in the moccasin of others, but to walk a few miles. And if we are able, through network, to help them accommodate themselves to be economically fit to live in this world, will not be miser, will network, based on collective responsibility. So through our work, we shift from blaming, because blaming is toxic. We shift from pointing the fingers. There are 3 fingers pointed at us. From dwelling on victimhood is suicidal. From guilt enhancement to collective responsibility. So this will be based on win-win and not zero-sum game. So we work together through restorative justice, through transformation, through investment in relationship with the people who are tortured by the Israeli. We try to walk with them. In Egypt and different Arab countries, between the political groups, meeting of the Palestinian people and talk about it. It's not easy. Through talks and negotiation among ourselves, through responding to the needs of the local community, through creating a strategy for the future, and through many ways. But the problem is not among Palestinians, but between the Israeli and Palestinians, because power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So this is the issue. We need to talk more. Yes, we have conflict among ourselves between main parties, Hamas and Fatah, And there have been many ways to talk about it. And there are many negotiations. The people are not happy with Hamas now in Gaza because there is no electricity, there is no water, and so on. They are having peaceful demonstrations against the power to be in Gaza. So we need also nonviolent struggle among ourselves. This is the question that poses itself. Is religion a source of conflict or a source for peace building and coexistence? I'm afraid that we see more source of conflict, religious practices. That doesn't mean from all, but I'm talking generally speaking. We see that religious extremism is including here and there is more power for religious extremist group in Israel. And we see in the Arab world growing of religious extremism. There is problem indeed, and especially nowadays when the Israeli government would like to go to the Dome of the Rock and establish the third temple. And the third temple will be established if they see the red heifer, and already right-wing groups brought red heifer cow from outside. The presence of Jews in Jerusalem already there, the creation of the state of Israel. So they are also now training new servants to serve in the temple. And if it is done through violence or any way else that's not, not recognizing who is there, will create a war. And this war will be more religious war and more conflict and more bloody than any role. Because if every group think that he or she receives instructions from God to do that, and every nation, every group believes that they spoke on behalf of God, either they will be martyrs or people killed for a good cause, or victorious against the other. This is not what I want. I'd like to see Jerusalem as a place of coexistence, peace, and loving and moving forward. I think religious extremism will be more, and the creation of a Jewish state now, and to have new laws based on Jewish tradition and Jewish religion will create much more difficult time for the people, not in Israel, Palestine, but also for the Middle East and in the world. I believe churches, Muslims everywhere, Jews who are open-minded, Muslims who are open-minded, Christians who are open-minded, should find amicable solution to all of the problems, because here we measure holiness by inches, and this is not what God wants us. God is loving, God is embracing all, and of course, we believe that we are created in the image of God.